episode 48, and boy am I looking forward to this particular discussion.
We will end up buggered under this current administration, and the alternative isn't going to be any better.
You very clearly rub shoulders with some
A few
of these
people,
people. What are donors thinking right now? What are they saying?
She said to me, well, you're going to tell me they're funded by the main four pharmaceutical companies. I said, yeah, I think it's about 146.3 million out of their 165 million budget. I said, how can they be honest in their treatment of things?
That's like the Liberal Party giving me 98% of the funding I need. And it's like, oh no, but it doesn't affect me. I would lose my following overnight if it was anything remotely like that.
Andrews and the Premier of New South Wales, Carr, sitting around a table in China, rewriting the history of the Second World War and how China won it. I occasionally get asked onto the ABC, believe it or not, and then I get banned for a year and a half because I'll say something out of turn.
Why are you actually trying to fix the problem rather than think about your own self-preservation? What's wrong with you?
DEI. I have a policy of employing anyone who can do the job. Doesn't matter what they are. They can do the job that's required to be done.
There are decades where nothing happens, and then there are months where decades happen.
The owners and operators of those businesses are up to their eyeballs in rubbish. We need to say, no, we're not going to have that crap anymore.
A lot of these businesses are being white-anted, and they're very much becoming political, cultural tools. Where does the fiduciary sort of duty come in?
The gutlessness of the political class in Queensland and in Australia. I am a Conservative. There's no ifs or buts about what I stand for, and I'll defend it forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Ark podcast, episode 48. And boy, am I looking forward to this particular discussion. I've got a person who comes from the business world. They started with 2 shops, and now today, after over 40 years, they employ 1,300 employees. And there's someone that I really want to get an insight to. As you guys know, I'm a young fella. I want to know exactly how power in this country is done, particularly with businesses, how decisions are made, how the tax law is actually crushing the little guy, who is abusing the system, who is sucking things out of the tax system, and basically just talking to another business owner that's out there. If you really enjoy this chat, give it a share, give it a like, check us out on Spotify. But I'm now going to introduce Heath Goddard to the conversation. Heath, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Pardon me, how are you?
Not at all. Like you don't usually do a lot of this going out there. You tend to keep to yourself.
Correct.
But this is kind of why I wanted to get you on the show. I wanted to understand.
Tease me out.
Exactly. Yeah, well, look, when it comes to what's going on in Australia, there are a lot of angry business people that are out there that they're not prepared to come onto a show and actually say, look, they're still on their way up. They're still you, but from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd like to say, you've made it. And a bit like Mark Burris, he talks a lot about the problems in Australia with the laws and with regards to how it's so hard to get a business up and going. And I wanted to pick your brain on that.
Well, probably even when we started, and I'm going back to 1977, we were... I'll use the word attacked by the leading operators in Australia. They would have mainly been department stores. Even the likes of the Kmarts and Targets were only just starting to be seen. But the status quo that existed when we kicked off didn't want to have some disruptor. We probably were a disruptor and how we operated. So in that moment, you were quickly on the front foot defending yourself. In really odd ways, and I was 25 years old, so you didn't really know what you should or shouldn't be doing, and everyone the observation was we couldn't possibly survive, and I always think, no one told the Wright brothers they couldn't fly, so we pressed on. Now, I won't deny I was the sub-junior partner in the original starting of the company, and the other gentleman was almost not quite double my age, but he was certainly the backbone of how it all started. As we rolled through from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, obviously there was transitioning, and we always reinvested. We didn't have helicopters or anything like that, and still don't have one. My process was always to reinvest and try to make yourself not beholden to the financial industry, And we got there. I mean, you could call me a bit of a cowboy. We were very lucky in the early 80s when Bob Hawke and Senator Button shut down the clothing, footwear and those industries. We were there to pick up on the opportunities that came, and that probably gave us a break, which you wouldn't have seen in, why did that happen, but it did. And again, we reinvested whatever profits we made back into making ourselves as secure as we could be for the rainy day. I came from Western Queensland, so I was well aware you get a lot of days where it won't rain. They're called droughts.
Yeah.
But so, and bit by bit, if I gave you the background on the sheer luck of what we did, coloured advertising didn't exist in 1976 or 75. We'd done a little bit in our prior jobs. It came along and we took advantage of it. In the early days, and the media is completely different today to the mid-70s, we used the local press. In my case, it was a paper in Queensland, and we were using medium colour that people hadn't seen before. Because a coloured ad in those days was a red dot on a black page. So we went off with coloured advertising. And so these things were coming and we embraced them. And I think that gave us a different position in the marketplace. And as merchandise was being offered to us at silly price points as companies were being shut down, only in reflection do you realise that at that time you were putting yourself in the position of offering branded quality product at a well-discounted price. Now, that gave you an alma mater of how do they do it, and at the same time our opposition were not too impressed by it.
Right.
But that was the start of it.
Yeah.
And I'm in the mid-80s, and then from there you started to get generic growth. There was a product that we were very, very involved with, which was called a continental quilt, and that didn't exist in Australia at all. We were the forerunners of that, and we were bringing in plane loads in the early 80s, and I think the department stores got on board by about 1983. Well, we'd been doing it for 6 years prior to that. So there was a product that gave us the opportunity to be different, and then the other things that snowballed in behind it, and away we went.
Can I ask, in terms of the fundamentals of running good business today, you see a lot of stuff online. How much of it is crap?
Oh, look, I think you've got to be a bit careful. I know that different ones can do things in a shadowy way, and I don't shop online. I go to the shop, and my daughter would tell you he couldn't even work out how to do it. That's a separate problem. But I think there's established decent businesses with an online presence. I think that gives them and the consumer a degree of confidence. But I wouldn't be buying from a lot of just a back unknown online business. Now, they could be quite genuine, or they could be as shifty as all get out. So that's an interesting one. Nearly every retail business now has an online structure about it. It certainly went from XYZ percentages to 3 and 4 times higher when COVID hit the decks. But we can run through all of that. In the short term, we didn't get into online. We had one of the first online presences in about 2000, 2001, and we did 2 or 3 parcels a week. Now we do, 1,500 in a day. So it's moved to, but it's not the be-all and end-all of enterprise. I think people say, oh, online's your saviour. Well, no, it's not. The whole modus operandi of what you do is your saviour. I would say that the special saviour is something which is a bit different to a lot of people. Don't lie. Maintain your decency and maintain your integrity. Now, that goes right back to day one, and never change it. And it's harder to do, but it's more important that you do it as an enterprise. Well,
let's talk about that. And look, in the previous discussion I had, it was with Graham Haycroft. He was very, very complimentary of yourself and some of the things you guys were doing together. And And he did mention the fact that a lot of these businesses are being white-anted and they're very much becoming political, cultural tools. How is this, where does the fiduciary sort of duty come in?
Well, I suppose as a business person, my real position would be, what do you do, and do it well for your customer? And there's many facets to that. And the second one to that is to make sure you look after your personnel, your people. And I've known Graham now for a few years. He's an interesting gentleman. And
be honest, he's not in the room, so
he could be listening.
Yeah.
But what we bumped into, and we had a shared interest in the, I'll use my word because I'm an old farmer, the gutlessness of the political class in Queensland and in Australia. I am a conservative. There's no ifs or buts about what I stand for, and I'll defend it forever. But when over the years I've been a contributor to the conservative forces in Australia, either at state and to a federal level, and now I find it nearly impossible to put my hand in my pocket to support the weakness, what would you call it, the shimmy-shamming of the parties on the conservative side, Liberal and National. And that's very hard to come to terms with. But you were sort of drawn into your philosophical bent. And I always thought that, the conservative side would be a better manager of money, being a business person. But I think that went out the door 100% when Morrison was Prime Minister. I thought, well, they can no longer talk about, money management because he proved they didn't have any. And Graham's come along and said, well, let's have it do something about this. So the joint forces that we're looking to do, and we're doing it from our own pocket, not from someone else's. We're doing it on a shoestring, and we'd certainly welcome support, just the same as you would welcome support, because you need cash to promulgate what you're on about. But we're on about not dismissing the current conservative member and structure, but making it a conservative thing that people can be proud of and want to be a party of. And that's what drives me to be involved with Graham. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a conservative voter yesterday, and he said, how are you going to do it? I said, well, we've got to get more people aware of it and do things like that. But I said, all I do know is if people do nothing, nothing will change. And if I fail on the difficulty, so be it. But if we don't give it a fly, we are buggered. And that isn't his, the people I run into, you're a young bloke, which is fantastic, but the number of blokes that I'm working with in other areas, every one of them's over 72. And we need young people to suddenly wake up to be a part of, oh my God, that's what they're really doing to us now. I was waiting in your anteroom there, and I was reading a thing on climate change. Now, I've done various things over the last 6 or 7 years, and one of the ones that really gets up my craw is the nonsense of net zero and climate change. I have an observation, and I ask nearly everyone this question: if we're going to have net zero and we're fighting carbon dioxide, and I say, how much is there? I've only found one person to get the answer right so far. Do you know?
No idea. I just say I don't believe it's real, and well, I think carbon is a good thing.
It is. No, it's a very good thing.
Yeah.
It is. Well, Ian Plimer knows what it is, but the only one who's given me the right answer so far was Tony Abbott, and it's 0.04 of 1%.
Oh yes.
Okay, that's it.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that we want in the world is carbon dioxide. Trees live off it, grass, everything, and the whole structure of life is part of that. So I got a bit motivated back a while ago on that one, and then COVID turned up, and then I really went, oh well. But I'm happy to go through my COVID experience, or the lack of it, because I got called in by a fellow, pardon me, because I'd gone and made a statement that no one in my company would be asked by me to take an injection. Now, I was very lucky because I ran into a gentleman, a professor of immunology, on about the 20th of March.
Right.
It might have been, somewhere around there. Might have even been before, early March.
Right.
And at the time, I was waiting to get my flu shot. And he'd rung me about something, and he said, he started laughing. And I said, what are you laughing about? He said, they don't work. And then he went through it all. And I fully understand now you can stick nothing in your arm, nothing, to help your immunomucosal system. Does not work, cannot, will not, never will. And when they got fully into the COVID nonsense, I think it's the TGA banned the use of ivermectin. Full stop. Now, if you took the ingredients of ivermectin and could convert them into a nasal spray, then I would concede you could have something that's very useful. The state of Uttar Pradesh in India, I think it's got 65 million people. I'm not denying people were dying from the coronavirus thing. However, Modi then said, chuck the vaccine away and gave them ivermectin. It stopped within about 2 days. Full stop. Now, that was ignored by the CDC and everyone else. Wrong. Very, very wrong. And the people who suffered under that. So you sort of went on a bit of a crusade for the lies that were there in the net zero climate change rubbish, followed by COVID. And having had the good fortune to talk to so many interesting people around the world at the time, and you just think, well, we can't afford to have no one doing anything about it. So I do my best.
I think COVID was an acceleration sort of thing. So what there's a great historical saying that there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are months where decades happen. And COVID very much seemed like that, and I think that's why a lot of people have gotten off the bench, let's say.
Yeah, well, it's been a long battle, and I was unaware of what people thought of me, but I found out that they thought I was a complete nutter, which could have been correct. But a few of them about 2 years ago came up to me, and they were ill, seriously ill. And one of them said to me, I wished I'd listened to you, because he said, I am now buggered. I've got this, I've got that, I've got this happening. And of course, I don't know who they are, TGA or whatever, they've ignored all the facts, all the figures and all the obvious answers that are there, and then they just say, that was going to happen to that person anyway. Well, one of my senior staff, his uncle died, and 2 others, and a very good friend of his, 38 years old, ran marathons, stepped out, had been fully vaccinated and got the second shot, going home to his family, walked out of a lift and collapsed and died right there on television because the bill. Now, they were not uncommon comments from this is the people I know, not 20 million that I don't know.
Yeah.
And you just think our medical system has been corrupted so badly. So that makes me get a bit excited.
Did you listen to Dr. S.M. Malhotra and how he made the point that...
I met him.
Oh, you met him? Oh, you probably helped bring him out, knowing you. So 98%, he made this point, I was shocked by the statistic, 98% of TGA's funding comes from industry.
From Pfizer, no, he's right. I ran into a professor of a university, and it was some sort of a thing they wanted me to be a part of, and I said, look, I really can't. And I'd have to not present myself until all that nonsense had got away. And for some reason, maybe she was a professor of medicine, I don't know who she was, made a comment about the TGA, and I said, well, yeah, I'm well aware of them. I said, and then she said to me, well, you're going to tell me they're funded by the main 4 pharmaceutical companies. I said, yeah, I think it's about 146.3 million out of their 165 million budget. I said, how can they be honest in their treatment of things? So that's what happened.
That's like the Liberal Party giving me 98% of the funding I need. and then it's like, oh no, but it doesn't affect me. I would lose my following overnight if it was anything remotely like that. I get 0. I get a big fat 0 from the Liberals, to be clear.
You don't do that. If you are presumed to be a decent structure for the benefit of the nation at large, and that's what you're doing, you'll be delisted.
They're the watchdog. And who's calling this out?
No, well, unfortunately, again, we come back to here you are helping people get a message out. That's very imperative because the mainstream media have been that deleterious in their prosecution of honesty. They haven't done it.
They're meant to be the guardians of democracy, and that's really why I am putting it into them. I'm like, you guys drop the ball. You pushed the fear during COVID. The politicians really reacted to that with their solution provided by the industry that funds the TGA, 98%.
Look, there was an opportunity, and I know that I gave a particular person all the information I had. It would have been, oh, crikey, Morrison was in charge, and he had an inner cabinet. And I gave some information to one of the members of the inner cabinet, and the message I got back was a lot of, I'll use the word Chaucerian English about how irrelevant my information was. But all I said was, why don't we have an open discussion? Unheard of, because there was too much money being thrown around for the benefit of whom I don't know, but there was plenty of it, and everything I'd sent down was just trashed. No discussion, no, there might be an alternative product here or something to do.
See, this is why people think that the Australian government is just owned by the corporations, whether that's certain, liquefied natural gas companies that don't pay royalties, or whether that's the pharmaceutical companies. Everyone just gets their slice except the Australian people.
Well, you asked me, how I've observed corporations, etc., and I was, by political bent, I was at a function, and I'll name him, Peter Dutton was there, and he was looking as though he might be the next Prime Minister of Australia. This might have been 18 months ago.
Yep.
And the people around the table were with large mining industries and other corporations, maybe even educational. I didn't know too many of them. But all I heard was them all asking, what can you do for us? And I'm thinking, well, no, what do you do for yourselves? Because I made a comment just a moment ago, I don't know if the thing was running. I think I've had $14.25, and that came about from a council in about the mid-1980s as compensation for something that they then rescinded the reason for me doing I think it was $15,000 worth of work on the farm.
You're saying you don't take anything from the government. In fact,
to my knowledge.
You give the government a lot, actually.
No, people listening to this would say, of course you take things from the government. They're running a safe, we've got defence, we've got this. And I'd say, well, actually our defence probably couldn't beat a swarm of mosquitoes, so it's not going that well. No, it's a fact. We don't have anyone.
Yeah. I think it was Jim Molan. No, it was Jim Molan that said this. He said, fundamentally, we're a one-shot military. It's not big enough. It's got no force. It's one-punch military. That's all we can do.
Yeah, well, so I'm talking about...
Yeah.
I've watched executives, senior executives from industry, and all they want is handouts.
Yep.
I'm aware, and I talk to different people who are fairly well connected with the defence industry, and you hear all these things and you think, well, what the hell is someone doing about it? Now, I'm going to be brutal and say the Greens, the Teals and the Labor Party choose to do bugger all about it because there's nothing in it for them, perhaps. But the Conservative person and the person who supports a Conservative structure does care about it. I was just asked to go out and do a bit of chitter-chattering out in the bush. I didn't run into one person that was happy with what the Conservatives were doing, and they certainly didn't like what the other mob were doing. Now, okay, that's a reflection on the electorate and so on, but they're really angry, and that's what's starting to happen. And so, all of these, I'll call them negatives of what we're observing nationally right now, it's welling up, and people are frustrated to all hell. Now, I know I can't change the Labor Party, and I certainly can't help the Greens, and the Teals, that's a different game of fish altogether. But the Conservative Party, and that's where Graham and I are joining forces to try to do something to put a bit of a stiffener into it and not mimic and echo what the Labor Party or the Greens are doing. It's wrong, in my opinion. But if your alternative fighter says, we're with them, well, hang on, there's a few of us who aren't with you now.
Yeah.
Now, and I know Graham's been in the party for a long time. I've been a supporter of it for probably 35 years in different ways. I'm not an avid, I don't go to the meetings and things like that. But you can't be more disappointed.
Yeah.
You know, when you think that there's a person standing there with your interests at heart, and then I heard the current Treasurer for Queensland say, we've got to have, work for net zero. What? And all I ask is why? What's it going to do? Other than we've got windmills and they're going to destroy the place. I accept photophotic cells on, I think that's the right word for them, on people's houses, and that if that can be used and save them money, fine. I don't have a problem with that. But to have to transition the amount of collection of energy, if they get any anyway, back through the system, and the overarching loss, and then the amount of subsidy they have to get to put all this crap on the ground or in the sky is wrong. It's just straight out wrong and stupid. And unfortunately, when I listen to that Bowen, I have to rush over and turn the TV off. I think the man's an idiot. Sorry.
No, I feel you. No, Bowen is no fan of mine. There's a lot of people in Western Sydney, on same-sex marriage. He voted against his community, who voted no to same-sex marriage. It was one of the few areas. So there's a lot of people in Western Sydney. They're the highest no voters. They were the highest people voting no to same-sex marriage. They don't like this climate change stuff. They tried to outlaw open fires in New South Wales, especially in Sydney and certain councils, and the backlash was huge. I mean, the amount of people that came out against it, and all of that is untapped energy that the Liberals refuse to even consider.
Well, it's nuts, because the people are genuinely disenfranchised, and it's not. I mean, the Labor Party voted at the last election, I think 32.4%. 68% don't like them. But how do you then say, well, this is what we're going to do to help you to get a better go in life, a better go in your community? We're not going to waste billions of dollars, and we're actually going to put a defence force together that might have an opportunity. I don't think we've got a drone in our army. I don't think.
Is that right?
I don't think someone will tell you, that's 3.
Yeah.
But we're an island.
We need to be a porcupine. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we've got, I think it's something like 222 assorted generals and 1-star officers or something or other in Canberra.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. I think in the war we had something like 28. 600,000 men in uniform.
Yeah.
So somewhere in here we've got it a bit wrong.
The bureaucracy has grown out in every way, in the military, in Canberra. We've got more bureaucrats in this country than any other nation per capita in the world.
We are number 1.
Wow.
And way above, I think Japan's number 2, and they're at about 66, and we're 103.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
And we've got 3 tiers of government. We've got 25 million people. Or 27, I think, now.
Yeah, not even in the UK do they have that.
No. So we've got it all wrong. Now, if you put your best foot forward and put this in front of the public at large, you might get a pleasant surprise that they actually think it's a good idea and to change. Now, I know Graham's been talking to different people in the state government, and they're tone deaf. They don't hear. And, we've had discussions about the union movement and how to rectify that and how to do this. And then all I draw from that is the buggers are gutless. They haven't got the cojones to do something about it, male or female. And we need to say, no, we're not going to have that crap anymore. I like to use the old, well before your time, there was a film called Network, and it was had the lead actor was Peter Finch. It was 1972, and the last half a minute of the show, Peter Finch is yelling at the moon, and his line was, "We're as mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore." Now, I think that's about where Australia, and maybe for that matter, Europe, the people, the general population at large, that's how they're feeling. So when you pose a question to me, why you, why Graham, well, he's got a far more erudite and sensible approach. I've just got to where I am, looking at the absolute and utter gutlessness of our political leaders, I'm talking Conservative, and then the iconic stupidness of the ruling ALP Green Teal. I mean, it's just rubbish, and we are going to go down the chute. Now, in amongst all of that, I have a business to run and 1,300 people and their families I'm responsible for. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, we will end up buggered under this current administration, and the alternative isn't going to be any better. So that's why I'm mad.
Yes, well, look, this is why this show exists, because they are disconnected, and the show is growing, and we want to put it in their faces. Donors and members are leaving the party in droves. We very much have been seeing this in the lead up to the last election, after the last election. The DEI, meaning, didn't earn it. Susan Ley getting the headship. This is why is this what the conversations you're having? You very clearly rub shoulders with some of these people. Yeah. What are donors thinking right now? What are they saying?
Well, I probably was when I was having those earlier meetings 12, 18 months ago. I wasn't aware as to how scurrilous the whole situation was.
Right.
And I suppose I can be, accused of being a bit of a dodo, head in sand, whatever you want to call me. But it quickly, even when the LNP won the Queensland state election, then to have them not, when Graham Haycroft went in and had a meeting with them and then put, this is what you can do to improve your position, and they're rushing to the other team. It's a bit like we're having a relay and we're all in the Russian team or somewhere, and our lane's got one person swimming the whole 600 metres. It won't work. That's what we're seeing. So I crusade all the time. I'm full on about, the ills of COVID, the stupidity of all the legislation that's there to really slow down enterprise.
Yeah.
What we want is the opportunity for private individuals, small companies. If you've got one team that got all the big guys in it and everyone else is about half their weight, nothing's going to go anywhere. But if there's 4 or 5 well-organised, strong operations, you can't be slack in your own business. You've got to get your act together, be mindful of what's coming at you, and then making sure that you're on the front foot, because it's not just you're worrying about. In my case, it's 1,300 others.
Well, that's leadership, and from what I'm hearing and the way that you talk about your employees as being families and people that you're responsible for, the politicians bear no cost for the decisions they make. They don't go and visit the people they're hurting. How does that make you feel as someone that understands what leadership is?
Well, I suppose we've done it for 40-odd years and we continue to grow. And I take succour from that insofar as what we're doing is the right thing to do. And I keep saying to my people, do not lie. I won't have a bar of it. And show decency. Now, not lying in business is difficult because a lot of people do lie. And you have to confront the lie and articulate your case. So as an enterprise, you are constantly revising your message to make sure that it can be heard and people are comfortable with what you're doing. And from time to time, you'll make an error and you'll see it happen. You'll see a dip in an area or whatever. So you've got to be forever vigilant on what you're doing and how you're doing it, and always be aware of where you can improve and help people. So it's probably old-fashioned.
Well, that's what I feel like is being thrown down here. We there used to be a quality that people would bring to their work. There used to be a basic standard of it wasn't a matter of the $2 hammer. It was no. This is my grandfather's hammer. It's lasted. We just don't have that approach to anything anymore. Everything is cheap. Just throw it out if it's broken, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't subscribe to that in my company. We look for the. Can we improve a $5 item, or can we make the $155 item smarter and better and more effective? So, you are asking in partnership with your supply structure, and in my game everything's offshore because I occasionally get asked onto the ABC, believe it or not, and then I get banned for a year and a half because I'll say something out of turn. But I would occasionally make an observation of this is what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, and so and so's not very good. So it's a difficult situation for an enterprise in today's society because there's an awful lot of lying, and to stand up and be honest and decent and thoughtful about everyone without calling out someone It's not because people often rush to what seems like, and it's the old story. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't. And if you're told that no, it's $50 and that's what it is, but so and so's got one for $35, well, I recommend you go and get one and find out why it's only $35.
Yeah,
because there will be a reason.
Yeah.
Or B, if they're doing something which is impossible, they won't be there in 18 months.
Right.
Because costs are costs. Business enterprises, it's everything.
Yeah. Well, can you tell me what are if you were Prime Minister for the day?
Oh, here we go.
And let's say God Emperor. Let's say you were God Emperor for the day in Australia, and you could cut 5 policies off the top of your head that are really getting in the way of small business.
Well, the first one that comes quickly to mind is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity.
Right.
I have a policy of employing anyone who can do the job.
Yep.
That's it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they are. They can do the job that's required to be done. And in my case, we've got lots of our trucks are driven by women. They enjoy it. What's more, I would say they're better than the men because they're more caring. But they can't lift a 400 bale of something or other up. So that'll be a big bloke from Fiji probably, or wherever. And that's one. The amount of reporting required is an absolute nonsense.
Right.
And doesn't have any effect on what you do or don't do.
Anything in the tax area?
Well,
I know some people always say payroll tax, for example, is insane.
Well, it's a penalty for being an employer. Now, that's got to be pretty weird. I don't know how much payroll tax we'd probably pay in a given year, but it'd be some many millions. I could probably give A, the people a slight pay increase, or B, put a few more on.
Yeah.
One or the other. The overarching tax burden on enterprise, and the one that was not even a policy yet, but the have worked for 4 days a week. Is that what they're talking about?
Something, yeah, like that. That's
now,
right. Yeah.
Now that's the most interesting one, because if you're going to employ that, where do you? And the doctor does a doctor get a 4-day week? So when you've just ripped your arm off in some silly accident and you run, oh no, he's away for 2 days, so you just have to sit outside there and bleed to death. I don't think that's going to go too well, but that's the lunacy of some thought bubble from somewhere. So whenever you see that and you think, God, if that's introduced, I was actually only thinking about it the other day in terms of our own business, and I thought we'll probably have to shut for a day because we can't pay the same money and then have 80% of work.
Yeah.
That's a straight out lunacy.
Right.
So anything where the status quo as we currently know it, working from home is curious. The people who have to be on the front line can't, but someone who does bugger all work can. Now, that could be a slant at some parts of the national employment structure, but if you're a required person, and okay, I'm a free enterprise, single business, people are only there because we need them. That'd be an accusation I'd have to wear. But we don't have people sitting around waiting for someone not to come in. We try to get the people. But then if you create an environment where they want to come in, you've actually got it right. And we have people, crikey, 30, 40 years been with the company. Now, that's because they like the ethos and the style of what we do and how we do it. It is a family company, and a lot of people like to work for a family business. And they say the fish stinks from the head down. Well, so far I haven't bloody got too smelly because we still have people wanting to be with us, and they openly say it.
Yeah.
I'm forever signing letters thanking someone for 10 years service.
Wow.
And that's 20, 30. I had one the other day for 35. I thought, God, how old is she?
Have you ever been asked to share your thoughts or your skills or what you found as an employer to some kind of government?
No, not from a government one. I was interviewed many years ago, but it was from I think it was something called Game Changers or whatever else. And, you know, how does a bloke from the Western Queensland turn up in Brisbane and then start something and sort of make it a success?
Sure.
Well, it's purely, I always say, well, it's not me. I'm just happen to be the last person standing from when it started.
Sure.
And it should always be noted that the whole structure and the effort put in by everyone is part of what makes it work. But no, I've never been asked. I was chatting to, I think her name's Michaela Cash, who could be the Industrial Relations Alternative Minister.
Yes.
And that was before the election, the last federal. I said, come out and have a look at what we do and how we do it.
She's got some teeth when she wants to fight.
Well, she might, but she didn't bother coming out to have a look because she probably thought, who's this nobody? Because no one knows who I am, and I'm not about to start telling everyone who I am. I just go about doing it because I think that's more important. Do it. And then someone said to me, oh, you do it and then ask for forgiveness. Well, I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm just looking to this is the best way to do it. And if you're the leader, you have to make a decision.
Yes.
So make one.
You're a good man, mate. Can I get your advice on something? Because I've been I listen to Peter Schiff online, and he makes the argument on Joe Rogan and other podcasts. Peter Schiff, he owns a gold company, and he has various different companies. He makes the argument that 50, 60 years ago they didn't really have minimum wage laws previously, and you actually had kids that would pump your gas. It would be if you had no minimum wage. It allowed people to enter the workforce at a very young age and actually enter the workforce and actually go up. So he gives the example specifically of the petrol station, where you had a kid there. You give him something very small. Maybe I don't know what they paid back then, but it was well below the modern day minimum wage, and it allowed the kid to learn skills like turning up on time, dealing with people, pumping the gas. Apparently, they were the best kept cars at the time. And so those kids entering into the market of employment, they went on to become the mechanics, as they were rubbing shoulders with the mechanics that were connected to the petrol stations and even owning the petrol station themselves. Do you think that the minimum wage has been a net negative or a net positive?
Probably in my time, it's been around for most of the time, the salary structures.
Sure.
But when we get a pay rise, the Fair Work Commission, that'd be the most misnamed operation in Australia. I may, if you ask me what I do, I'd probably shut that for a start.
Right.
Because it's rubbish. But the Fair Work Commission makes a decision to give a 3.5% or 4% wage rise. Now, that's not the first part of it, because then you've got all the add-ons, the superannuation, the increased payroll tax, the increased this and that and that. And they say, increased productivity. Doesn't happen. Whatever productivity you've got, that's it. Now, when they make that determination and then say we're looking for increased productivity, give the pay rise, but don't make some, ridiculous comment about increasing productivity. That will only come on how the people who are working with you perceive the enterprise and can they get something better out of what they do. But it's usually going to be generated from management to say we can probably do this better if it becomes increased productivity. I started work probably at the age of 6 or 7, I think it was, on the farm. And if you're a child of a farmer, as soon as you could do something, you went and did it. And my job might have been penning up the sheep.
Yeah.
I was sent to boarding school at the age of 8, which is a pretty good, backgrounding. So you learn resilience, you learn a whole lot of things, and probably where you're coming from is a young bloke of 7 or 8 or 9 going and helping in Dad's garage or someone who the father knows, doing menial work, cleaning the windscreens when the cars come in.
Yeah.
That's good, because he's going to learn to keep out of the way of a car that's rolling too fast, and he's going to learn how to do that and then get his 25 cents or whatever it was. And probably in my case, I was lucky that I was not forced, but given the opportunity to do that.
Yep.
Because you're right, you learn to get out of bed. Good starting point.
Well, that was where I'm coming from. A lot of these, let's call them WOG families, Lebanese, Italians, Greeks, they'd often work in the family restaurant, work on the construction site with their father, and they would be on illegal wages below minimum wage, and they did this under the table. And I'll openly admit that's what happened with me working under Dad, and it gave me skills, and it forced me to get up at 5 a.m. So it's easy to do now. And these are basic things that we just don't see now. So when I say to someone, but Joel, we've got to have a $15 minimum wage for Macca's workers, because otherwise, how are they going to live? How are they going to fund their kids and this and that? And I'm like, they're not meant to be in a Macca's job with that, that is meant to be for the younger kids coming into the workforce. It's not meant to be your final destination as a job.
Yeah, well, we've got people who ask us, could their 13-year-old daughter come and have 3 hours on a Saturday?
Yeah.
And they'd be happy for it, probably a bit of child minding, quite frankly. But that aside, we say we can give them a menial task that is important.
Yeah.
We could do something for them, or they could just be cleaning the floor, or putting the boxes that are empty altogether in a corner and cutting them down. There is lots of small jobs that would have a lot of relevance to thousands and thousands of small companies.
Yeah.
And because we have some dictatorial bloody ruling made, all that's gone, and then all of that inclusivity, if you want to have the word inclusivity, opportunity to do things, is dismissed. But you're legislating, and it's bad legislation. I've yet to see a piece of legislation, I'm sorry to say, in the last 40 years. Gee, that's a good piece. Now, someone will tell me what such and such, but most of it is constructed for the benefit of someone somewhere that doesn't need the benefit.
Absolutely.
That's what happens.
Well, this is what's missing, Heath. I've mentioned in my previous discussion, where are the adults? The adults have left the room. I left school, 10 years ago. I've been looking around for 10 years. Like, I thought, okay, I'm an adult now. I need, where are the adults? Where are the packers of the world to actually put these politicians back in line and put them in their place? Nowhere to be found. Am I the only one that's wondering this question?
You're not the only one, but you're probably one of the more visible ones, and you're articulate, and you've made an effort to do something about it. I would observe in reverse to that, a lot of small business or businesses, the owners and operators of those businesses are up to their eyeballs in rubbish.
Yep.
That's what's happening.
Right.
And it's government paperwork. I mean, we're probably, I'll have a guess, spending $300,000 a year filling out paperwork, all of which has no relevance to anything. But we do it because it's mandated that we have to. One of the ones I've got is equal opportunity or something like that. Now, I think that's brought out to make sure there's enough women employed. Well, 90% of my staff are women, so I'm not doing enough for the men. But, I have to fill it out.
Yeah.
And it never changes. Whatever it was last year, it'll be a couple more this year. And you've got to go through, and then you've got to answer questions associated with, such lunacy.
Yeah.
But there'll be a whole draft of people in the background somewhere pestering themselves stupid over, this can't be right. Well, get on the phone, ring me up and find out. I'll let them know. But that never happens. You've got to have 55 bloody pieces of paper flying around for no good sense.
Can I say one of the funniest arguments, Rami, I know you'll like this, one of the funniest arguments I've heard that just debunks the whole men and women don't get paid the same, women are doing the same amount of work as men, but they get paid less. One of the funniest arguments is, if that was true, then why don't these organizations all employ men? I mean, only women. Because then the men would be too expensive. You'd make more of a profit on, you keep your costs down if you only had women. Well, so that's what you're doing, right, with 90%. And I'm joking. I'm joking.
Well, I'm actually not, because there's an award, and no matter who you are, you get paid the award, or you might be paid more because we have incentive programs to be civil, get to work on time, do this, and you write down all the things that people choose not to do, so that they'll come and do it. And if they do that, well then, if we succeed, it's a trickle-down system, but everyone gets a tickle, so to speak.
I love the women listeners of this show. So 66% of the listeners on the show are women. And believe it or not, a lot of people think it's younger men. And I'm like, no, it's actually older women, older men, younger women. That's the demographic breakdown. But no, I really love that clip of Kerry Packer just really digging in the elbow into these politicians and running circles around them.
Yeah, and look, he had a fairly strong position to do that. Most companies that I'm aware of, they're profitable, but it's hard work to be profitable. And soon as a determination that was made, if I've got 1,300 people, I'm paying a pretty fair salary, and I do. But a 4% jump is a lot of extra cash to find every month, every week. And you've got superannuation, you've got other entitlements. One other thing, if I had my way, I'd probably have less holidays.
Public holidays, you mean?
Well, a lot, because now it's not going to happen. But I think I've had maybe in nearly 50 years working, I'm going to have a guess, 30 weeks holiday. It should be about 150 or 60. It mightn't even be 30. I might be exaggerating, but I don't even feel I need them. People say to me, "You get out of bed at 5:30 and you go to work. You come home late." I said, "Yes, I'm not very efficient, but I'm more as an enterprise person, you're the person at the front end. You do have to set examples. Leaders lead. Leaders make decisions, and they've got to have the courage to make a decision, and then that can fall back into our political leaders who make very poor decisions and consistently make them. And when you've got people around you that have got a very sound position and a very balanced structure, like a Graham Haycroft with, say, the Nurses Union and all the rest of it, I would think if I was a Conservative Industrial Relations Minister in a state where the bloke's bloody done really well, I'd be over and having a good chat to him and saying, I think we should follow this man, not the rubbish we're doing, our enemy. And this is the sort of nonsense which... So early in the question, why are you doing what you're doing? We're doing it because we are completely and utterly shattered by the inefficiency and the incompetence of those that should be rallying around and helping those who help others. And they're telling you not to do it.
Can I ask, on a personal level, there's a great... a lot of people have bomb shelters in New Zealand, and a lot of global rich people.
Correct.
They have bomb shelters in New Zealand and Australia because we're outside certain ranges of...
Well, we're not anymore.
Not anymore, but we're not exactly targets as well. It's funny, when a lot of the wealthiest people of the world, they have this information about, okay, this is the range and this is where we can go and whatever, rather than trying to prevent the nuclear war happening and use their resources towards peace, they more think about self-preservation. Why are you not doing that? Why are you actually trying to fix the problem rather than think about your own self-preservation? What's wrong with you?
Well, I think it's something that, it's ingrained. My father was a rat of Tobruk.
Wow.
And my uncle died in New Guinea, not from being shot. He got malaria. And now these were men of, if you read into the SAS, for instance, it started in, but when you read the quality of all of those individuals, or the people who were around in the 1800s into the mid-1900s, the sacrifice, the effort, the strength of character, that to me is what's ingrained in my background, probably similar with Graham. And these are things that, you don't walk away from it. And you should try and rectify where you see error. And if I've got a person who's making a mistake in one of the business areas, I'll go and explain to them what they're doing wrong. Now, if they continue to do it wrong, they're not listening and they can move on. But I've found nearly everyone with a bit of support, help and education, most people are pretty good and they want to be part of what you're doing. So that would be where I'd come from on that.
I didn't know you had relatives that were in rats of the Tobruk.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Well, when you hear what they did, and all of them did, and if you really want to be on both sides of the ledger, the Germans and the Australians, it was bloody awful and nuts. Now, I'm not a proponent of war or anything else like it, because it's no good, and it doesn't have to happen. But the problem is, where it's going wrong is that the leaders are bad news. Now, I would think if I knew of a leader, I'll call him a Putin or a Xi or any other despot, and this is what we're trying to do, probably alert the Australian public to how badly they are being treated by their peers of government. That's what's wrong. I mean, I think 2 days ago you had Andrews and the ex-Premier of New South Wales, Carr, sitting around a table in China rewriting the history of the Second World War and how China won it. No, they didn't get close.
Right.
Well, that's what they did. They went up there. These guys are obviously living in another planet or something or other. You can't possibly go and say that, because the Chinese were absolutely thrashed by the Japanese, and the Americans came to, and the British, and probably different other influences, and did something about it.
The history of China is an interesting one. You can find, I think it was in it's documented in, it's spoken of in the 48 Laws of Power, where the Maoists actually allowed the government of the time to fight, and be weakened by their fight against the Japanese.
Because they wanted to come and take them. That was Chiang Kai-shek's mob. Yeah, exactly.
Their
And they were pushed right back into the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So they didn't do crap. They actually, they just got like a snake in the reeds, and they just waited.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good quality socialist approach to everything. Steal the blood from the other, and not put in your own.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You're probably one of the better people to ask this. The Rats of Tobruk used to say, "She'll be right," but they don't mean it the way we mean it today. They meant, "She'll be right. Let's get on with the job."
Yeah, and
is that right?
Well, I think anyone whose fathers were in the front line, they spoke very little about what they did or what they had to do and how they did it. And I know my father was one of the first 8 to go into Tobruk, just by chance, lucky fellow. And they had to go at night. I think it was about 800 or 900 kilometres or miles from Cairo, and go through the German lines to get into Tobruk in the first instance. And that was in 41 or 2. Now, they got there, and they were nearly all bushies. And they were used to having the car break down out in the flat in the middle of nowhere, and they could fix it. Well, they had to fix it up in a rocky old bit of crappy country in Egypt. So I think the background of the individual that you're talking about from the 30s, 40s was so high versus what we now have, which is a softer, sookier structure. Now, I was lucky enough to be brought up on a bad piece of country and had a lot of droughts. I'd like to just bring that into climate change too, if I may.
Sure.
Bad country, climate change.
Yeah.
Every 70 years we appear to have major sunspot activity. And so if you want to look at it, 1880, 1950, 2020. And then you have a period of 7 to 8 years of fairly intense rain, but not in any one location. It's patchy where it hits. It's intense because you've had Sydney having rain you had the whole of the Western Queensland go underwater from about Mount Isa south and west of the Warrego River. I can go back to the 50s. Same thing happened. Our farmhouse didn't go underwater, but it was flooded in 52, and then Cunnamulla was flooded in 56, and all this history is there. So when we talk about climate change, it's absolute rubbish. It's weather, and it changes, and it comes back from. And if our Bureau of Meteorology people would have a look at the people like Clement Ragg, I can't think of the other couple of fellows, Lennox Walker followed them on. But what they did was sunspot activity, and then made an observation of it, and then they could do a forecast for a period of time. And then you will find, I'm on record as saying we'll have a drought in Queensland in about 2032, which is about the time frame from the 2020.
Right.
You can write. Well, you can see weather situations happening. I have a gentleman I know who builds craft for the Pacific Islands, and he goes to every island, and the sea level hasn't moved a millimetre in 35 years.
Yep.
It's bullshit.
It's amazing.
No, that's rubbish.
Yeah. That they can get away with this bluff in this game of poker.
Well, I think it's due to the, again we come back to people's trust. They shouldn't give any form of government or senior bureaucrat, and I'll chuck in a lot of the leaders of industry now, don't give them the trust, because somewhere in there's someone trying to steal your dough, and it's not good. Now, I don't want a cent from anyone, and I put that back, and Graham and I should be upfront. We're not asking anyone other than ourselves to foot the bill for the effort to put a bit of stiffening into the LNP, because we don't want to get rid of them. We just want to make them a decent alternative structure, and not yes, me too. Because yes, me too isn't the fix.
Yeah.
So you're asking me questions about industry and carrying on and looking after the people. That's one side of it. But at some point in time, it will snap and break if we've got everyone doing the wrong thing. Not ourselves, but the operators of the politics of this country. And right now, it is rubbish.
And that's why you want to set up the Liberal Reform Association.
Correct. And other things, and hopefully, your wonderful structure to be standing or sitting here saying, what can we tell the people? And if everyone who listens to you passes it on so that the lay people get to hear, because our mainstream media are not doing the job. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Now, we used to trust the ABC. Not anymore, because they just give one slant and one slant only. They've got to go back to what they were in the 60s.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And be what they were, what their charter says.
I spoke to some of the former heads of even 7, 9 and 10.
Yeah.
And they explained to me, Joel, you don't understand. We wouldn't have survived the COVID era if we didn't take the government handouts and toe the coronavirus lines. And I said, mate, you would have flourished if you were the only one that came out against it. You were free to air. You could have totally crapped on it.
Yeah, and that... Well, I spoke with a lady from, I think, King Island or somewhere, and her business was... didn't think much about it, but it was a business where she had masseurs that go into businesses and sort of sort out necks and whatever. Anyway, it worked. Obviously, people thought they needed it. But she did get phoned by Channel 9 and she had to send 3 or 4, couple of girls, couple of blokes in to do a service on their Channel 9 newsroom. While they were in there, I don't know how channels work, but the lead of the station that night was telling, don't put that up, that won't frighten, and then there was a lot of expletives, them enough. Put up something more frightening so that we can scare pants off them. Now, that was in Channel 9's newsroom, and it must have been about mid-20s, 21 or something or other like that, when they were wanting everyone to get jabbed. And I went on and said, no one in my company will be dismissed or enforced to have any injection whatsoever. Wow. I already knew they didn't work. I didn't know how dangerous they were, but I knew they wouldn't fix them.
Right.
Have you ever had a look at one of those silly masks? Everyone was asked to have a look at one under a magnifying glass. The hole's about 1.5 inches wide. If you can breathe through it, any virus can come in.
That's right.
I also happen to know that 98% of what everyone thinks. Who started the Spanish flu? If Wuhan started the
the Chinese?
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah. No, look, they call it a safety blanket, the whole mask thing.
It was bullshit.
It was all bullcrap. And also the whole manipulation in the early days of the virus. I remember, people forget these things. In early 2020 in the US, it was the conservatives that were saying everyone wear a mask, and then it flipped when the government flipped. It flipped, and then the conservatives became the ones not wearing the mask. And even Fauci, he said, no, you don't need a mask early on until they secured their supplies for a mask. Then they said, okay, no, everyone needs a mask.
Yeah, I've heard a few nasty stories on the mask retail business and who demanded what and where and who was allowed to supply them. I know what they actually cost made in... Well, I actually saw a video of them being made in Indonesia. Right. And they were sitting on the floor in the dirt making these masks. I thought, I don't want one of those ones. But anyway, I refused to wear them.
I wanted to finish on a point about the rats of Tobruk and what they were made of. So I was talking to Tony Abbott the other day. And,
all right.
He I don't know if you saw the viral video recently of him lifting up a boom gate to let people out from his... So he was hosting a dinner at his office, and everyone... It was the end of the dinner. Everyone was trying to go out. So they're all in the car park, and it's all bumper to bumper. They couldn't get out. There was clearly a problem. Tony gets out of his car. He shows some initiative, goes to the front. He presses the beeper. He talks to some foreign call centre, Indian. And he's like, mate, you can't keep these people captive, or you can't keep them prisoner here. Can you lift up the gate? And the gate lifted up, and a few people went out, and Tony got out, and he parked his car just to make sure everyone else got out.
Yeah.
And then the same problem. It closes again. And he goes up to it, and he says, look, if lift it up again, and he said, mate, I think the mechanism's broken. And he's like, all right, well, can't keep these people prisoner here. I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to let them all out. And you're going to have to sort this out, okay? And so that's where the video comes from, of him holding it up and all the other people getting out. And I just said to Tony, that X factor, everyone else is just waiting. That X factor reminds me of a quote, that revolutions begin with a whisper, but a leader turns them into thunder. Is that the same quality that was in greater doses in the World War I and II guys? Is that because they were farmers and they came from that sort of background?
Well, there was all sorts of people, but I just know that the truck full that went across in early 41 to go to Tobruk was just a platoon, not even a platoon, 8 men I think it was, in a couple of rusty old trucks, and they happened to be from country Australia. And in those days, people from country areas had enormous skills and enormous resilience, and they needed it. As we went through the 60s, 70s and 80s, we probably became softer. And unfortunately now, I think our very young, and I say 35 back to 18, they need a bit of stiffening because they suffer from severe entitlement. And it doesn't necessarily, and you were making the point about young children being able to go and do a few jobs and getting $2 or $4 for the, half an hour, whatever it might be. I think that's a very good idea. And we shouldn't have legislation that precludes it happening. It's not child labour. Yeah. 99.99% of it will be families doing something, or families knowing someone like me and saying, could my daughter come in and do 3 hours on a Saturday? Right. And I'd say, no trouble at all. Because we know the environment's safe, we know we've got good people, there's going to be nothing going awry, and it'll happen in between 12 and 2 o'clock or something or other. And we'll get a benefit and the child will get a benefit. But it ain't going to happen with the, I'll use the word nanny state stupidity that we enjoy in this country. It can't.
Not at all. Heath, I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion, and you thought that we'd only go for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And
correct.
No, look, we've done an hour, and I could keep chatting to you, but I know you've got a brief trip here, and I don't want to hold you up, but you're always welcome anytime. I had plenty more questions to go through with you, and you're a wealth of knowledge. And I think there's a lot of people that whenever I bring business leaders on, they're very much your words hold more gravitas, and the sentences are pregnant with meaning versus that of a politician's, because you've actually done something, and people in the audience, they really appreciate that. So I want to thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
Not at all. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support the podcast, like it, share it, comment, let me know what you thought about this. Was there any questions you had for him that we didn't get to, that you were burning in there? Put them in the comments, and I'll be sure to ask him next time. Next time Heath comes in. God bless you all. Take care. The donation link's in the description. I'll see you next time.